Hello all, and welcome to the Rails board meeting. This is Friday, September 24th, 2021. I am Thomas Stagg, president of the Rails board, and I call this meeting to order at 1 o'clock. Emily, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Sue Busenbark.
Here.
Hallie Cox. Alice Creason.
Here.
Robin Hollenthal.
Here.
Diane Hollister.
Here.
Chris Kenny.
Here.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Here.
Scott Poynton. Patricia Smith. Becky Spratford.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Tuppen.
Here.
Alex Vancina. And Karen Boytik.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Emily. And now on to recognition of guests and announcements. We will handle guest and public comments at the same time. Let's start with the guests here in Burr Ridge. Deidre, will you start?
Yes, Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Jim Krieger, Rails. Don Shaw, Water Vodka Damon.
Sharon Swanson, Rails.
Ryan
Cindy-
Hempel, Rails.
Cindy Fessmeyer with Constructive Disruption.
Any public comments in Burr Ridge? None, okay. Moving on to our guests in East Peoria, I see one there.
Hi, Kendall Larson, Rails. I am comment free.
Comment free, well.
He's always funny.
How about the Illinois State Library?
Greg McCormick, and I too am comment free.
Thank you, Greg. Emily, will you read the names of the guests who are participating via Zoom?
Yes. Myself, Emily Feister, Stacy Palmisano, Wesley Smith, Ryan Hebel, Ann Slaughter, Brian Smith, Cindy Fessmeyer, Layla Heath, Mark Hatch, and Mary Witt.
Wow, that's a lot of people on Zoom. Thank you. If Emily has not read your name, please state your name and your affiliation, or put it in the Zoom chat so that you can read it and add it to the minutes. Emily, did you receive any public comments by email?
I did not.
Okay, thank you. If not, does anyone have a public comment at this time? Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5, the famous consent agenda. We have items 5.1, the adoption agenda, 5.2, and Rails board meeting from the August 27th meeting, and approval of disbursements. Does anyone wish to move any item to the regular agenda for further discussion? Okay, may I have a motion and second for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second, Becky.
Jennifer moves, Becky seconds. Thank you very much. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next, we have Sharon Swanson with the Rails financial report.
Hello, you will find the August financial report in your packet. I'm just going to cover a few highlights of this month, but please feel free to ask questions about anything that I both cover or don't touch on. The August 31st general fund cash and investment balance of $19.3 million would fund approximately 20.1 months of operations. Revenues through August of $1,271,999 were nearly $1.5 million under budget. And this is primarily due to not having received any budgeted area and per capita grant payments during the first 2 months of this fiscal year. And as I noted this last month, the payments have been very unpredictable in past years. So this variance, budget to actual variance, will continue to fluctuate throughout the year. The very, very good news that we did receive this month is that the Illinois State Library very recently informed Rails that they will be releasing both the general revenue and the first two of 6 total live and learn payments. These total nearly $3.8 million of the annual APC grant allotment of $9.9 million. Given the state comptroller's payment timelines as of late, these payments are expected to be issued very, very shortly. Last year, Rails received all APC grant payments by May, including both the remainder of the fiscal year 20 allotment, as well as the entire fiscal year 21 allotment. And we are hopeful that this year will be very, very similar to that. Expenditures through August of $2,421,163 were nearly $89,000 below budget, as nearly all major cost categories were under budget, with the notable exception of supplies, postage, and printing expenditures. This overage was due to the completion of the $125,000 laptop replacement purchase during the month of August. The expenditures for these were originally scheduled and budgeted for fiscal year 21, but were delayed due to production and shortages caused by the pandemic. May I answer any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. Now it's off to the reports. I will start off with the report at this time that I have no report. There was a report for the advocacy, EDI, and Universal Services Committees included in the packet. Does anyone have any questions or any additional things to report? We did have a subcommittee report, a subcommittee meeting last week for the LSAPs, and we're continuing to work on that. So,
Right.
If no questions, then we'll move on to the Rails. Deidre.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Nice to see everybody again, back from a long vacation, a wonderful vacation. I want to thank the board and the staff for making it possible for me to do that, especially Monica for stepping in last month. As a result, as I note in my report is pretty short because I was not around for a part of the time. But I would just draw your attention to especially the first a part of my report on the legislative proposals. You'll see that our continuing push for the statewide database access funding was voted #1 by the Public Policy Committee, ILA, so that's really good. That now goes to their executive board to decide officially. And of course, we'll keep working on it anyway. We did win the Atkinson Award, as you know, that will be awarded at the conference on October 14th, next month. I would also draw your attention to the, on the next page, the spread the word, the top 3 sort of advocacy talking points that Mary is providing us. And then at the end of this report, I did, as you had requested, give you a first quarterly report on progress on my goals. And you'll see that things generally are, in just about every area, are proceeding. I think the one I think there was the goal related to data. Grant's been really, goal 6. He's been very busy doing a lot of data analysis, so he hasn't been able to do much of the consulting work that he did start a couple of years ago, but I know he wants to get back to that. So happy to answer any questions. Anybody, anywhere.
No questions.
Yes,
Wow. That's unusual for this.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up is Ann Slaughter with the service of the month. Service of the month. There she is.
Hello, everyone. Today we're going to focus on LSAPs, what they are, and how Rails supports them. So I've included a lot of documents in your packet to kind of illustrate what the LSAPs are and what we do for them. Starting with, a memo that I will touch on in a moment, but first I'll actually direct your attention to the second document for this item on the agenda, the LSAP definition. The Rails board has an approved definition of LSAPs that expands on the definition that is set out in the Illinois Administrative Code. And the most recent expanded definition that was approved by the Rails board was in 2016. So that's in your packet. It's got the definition that's in the administrative rules, as well as the Rails definition and some kind of background on how all of that came to be. But in short, an LSAP is a group of libraries that shares an integrated library system and is supported by the regional library system. Supporting LSAPs is core to the Rails mission. They are a significant engine for what we think of as kind of traditional resource sharing, the sharing of library collections via interlibrary loan. And in the first memo, we have a breakdown of membership that kind of shows you the landscape of the LSAPs that we have in Rails. There are 6 of them in total, with a lot of history. 3 of the current 6 LSAPs were originally developed by systems, meaning that in their predecessor systems, they were begun as kind of a department of that regional library system. 3 of the current LSAPs were originally independent, and those groups began receiving financial support in 2019. The ones who were developed by systems were RSA, SWAN, and Prairie Cat, and then the other 3 are the groups that began as independent groups. And their origins have had quite a large impact on the current state of things, which I'll kind of get to as we go along here. Each of the groups you can see in the membership breakdown, there is a huge range of size, from 6 libraries to 150. And they also offer a variety of services. Some of these groups don't have staff, don't have dedicated staff. For example, Rock River Library Consortium is a group of libraries that's concentrated around the Sterling, Illinois area. And they're operated by the director of the Sterling Public Library, who obviously has other responsibilities on her plate as well. So what they do is pretty bare bones. They just provide integrated library system software, library catalog. And then a group like SWAN has, I think at this point, 17 staff members. They provide a lot of services to their members. They have, in addition to the catalog software that is very, it's a robust kind of suite of services that they have through their vendor, including things like an app, a separate discovery layer that they've done a lot of customization to, consulting, training, sophisticated reporting, a very full range of services provided by their staff. they're all really different from each other. Their demographics also vary. Although you can see that the groups are heavily public overall. Rock River is the only one that is more school than public, or really more any type other than public. But most of them are multi-type, serving more than just one type of library. And they're all open to membership by other types of libraries. And then we also have, as kind of a side note, Carly, the academic consortium that's operated by out of the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, is statewide, and 62 of the members in the shared catalog that they operate, called iShare, are also Rails members. But Carly has a different support and operational structure. It's not really part of the regional library system ecosystem, although they are partners and colleagues in many ways, of course. But to kind of round out the understanding of the membership demographics and the variety and diversity that we have across the state with these groups and their membership. I didn't include the resource sharing map, but we have it in our public locations, and I think you probably got it in your orientation materials. Maps the public libraries that are in the consortia, so you can really see the geographical distribution of these groups as well. So Rails support for consortia has evolved pretty significantly since Rails was established. I mentioned earlier that we had this breakdown of our current LSAPs. Only half of them were originally supported by systems. The other half were independent. The expanded definition that was approved in 2016 paved the way for us to expand support to the independent groups. And we now distribute our support to all of these groups via a grant program that I'll explain. But the support that we give the LSAPs breaks down essentially into two distinct grant programs that we run, and those are all summarized in the next document in your packet titled Rails Support to LSAPs Fiscal 15 to Fiscal 22. So it's a lot of numbers, covering a lot of years, with a lot of asterisks. This was as simple as we could make it. And I'll talk through everything, but I'm open to answering any questions you have. But we provide operational and supplemental support that goes directly to the LSAPs. And that's the first page of that summary. And we also have support for membership growth. And those are the two grant programs. So the LSAP support grant, which again, you can see in the summary of how the numbers break down. But then I also have included the reports that each of the groups submit, that they submitted for their fiscal 21 grants. So you can kind of see how these groups are composed and the services they provide and how they use Rails grant funding. So as I'm sure if you had time to read through these reports, you observed how different they all are and the different needs and uses that they have for Rails support. But in summary, the support that we provide is via a mix of financial support and in-kind services that some of the groups opt into. This totals about 2.25 million, or about roughly 20% of the Rails budget. The in-kind services that we currently offer include financial services, which the groups that receive financial services are extremely happy with. Some data center services, housing some equipment in our data center in Burbridge, delivery to the LSAP headquarters, and then kind of more significantly, two of the groups, Prairie Cat and RSA, their staff reside and work out of, well, when there's not a pandemic, they work out of our service centers. And we also provide staffing for RSA. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there used to be more system staff that were LSAP staff. And so now we're just down to the one. Prairie Cat and Swan were more recently employed by systems, but they went through a process of taking their staff independent. So their staff are now employed directly by the LSAP boards. So that support that we provide is allocated using a formula that we've developed. It considers the numbers of interlibrary loan and reciprocal borrowing transactions by these groups. They're the sum of their resource sharing activity throughout the year, the number and types of libraries that they serve, as well as a couple factors that that are aimed at ensuring equity of our distribution of funding, focused on library funding, their ability to pay their consortial costs. So it's an annual grant program. The fiscal 2023 application was due on September 15th, which means we're currently in the review process. The formula is looking great. The formula was developed by Grant Halter in consultation with myself. It is stable. It's designed to be stable across volatility, which has been very helpful for us after these couple years of pandemic-related volatility in library activity. But anyway, so we're currently in the review process, putting all of these numbers together, and as well as determining the costs to Rails of providing the in-kind services that I mentioned. And we'll be determining their support levels by late October, probably more like mid-October, but the libraries will get that, the consortium will get that information for their own budgets. I think I mentioned at orientation, this does mean that Rails is committing to support levels before we make our own budget, because our own budget cycle happens much later in the year than the LSAPs does. So we do this with this timing kind of as a courtesy to the LSAPs to give them some information that they need for their own budgeting and planning purposes. But of course, our funding is always subject to, and that is spelled out in the agreements as being subject to the availability of state funding in any given year. So the other way that we support LSAPs is via the catalog membership grant, which is how we support membership growth. Supports the expansion of resource sharing by growing LSAP membership. And it is designed to provide support to libraries for many of the one-time costs that are associated with joining a consortium. The bulk of these costs are vendor services, the data migration costs and consulting through their migration, as well as many libraries need additional technology equipment that is required for them to be able to go live and use the ILS software, providing public catalog access to their patrons, access to staff for cataloging purposes, that kind of thing. A lot of libraries need updated technology for that. So the grant is designed to provide that. Since fiscal 15, which is the year this grant program started, we've made 67 awards, totaling about $1.7 million. This has supported 55 individual libraries, as well as 3 group migrations. And those group migrations have resulted in the 6 LSAPs that we have now. When I started at Rails in 2014, we had 10 consortia in our service area. So due to mergers, that number is now at 6. There are 2 grant application periods in fiscal 22. The first one is on October 15th, so it's just a few weeks away. I'm not actually expecting any grant applications for this period, which happens sometimes, especially now when libraries are more likely to be in survival mode rather than making big moves like a catalog migration. But that doesn't mean that we won't have a surprise. I just haven't heard of any of them. You will hear about any grant awards that we make. The next deadline is April 15th, and we probably will have applications then. So that's one of the budget lines that you'll hear about in the financial reporting that is spent out really unevenly throughout the fiscal year. And we always budget as generously as we can based on projects that we're aware of in the pipeline. So Tom mentioned that the consortia committee, which focuses on consortial issues for Rails and statewide, has a working group called the LSAP Sustainability Working Group. That group just got started. Its first meeting was August 30th, and we just had a second meeting on Monday. That group will be meeting monthly. I included the charge in your packet as well. So you can see that this working group is dedicated to kind of examining the support that we currently provide, as well as exploring opportunities for kind of reimagining or remodeling that support. And we're looking to focus on a few things. It's important to us, of course, that member services are preserved to our shared members, regardless of Rails funding, that these groups can go on if Rails funding is drastically reduced, through no fault of anyone's, as well as looking at equity across consortia. We've looked at equity across libraries, but as I've mentioned, we've got some kind of longstanding structural inequities due to these varied origin stories and kind of storied history behind these groups over the past several decades that kind of define the LSAP landscape in many ways, as well as you can see in the reports, kind of the needs that these groups have for our funding. Some groups really rely on our funding for their daily operations, while others use it as a purely kind of supplemental bonus, helping them with provide added value services to their members. So the group is just getting started, kind of still in research mode, going through what happened in our initial brainstorming and looking at what we need to explore further in order to make the recommendations that are called for in the charge. And with that, I will open it up to any questions you have.
So I just want to thank you, Anne. That was great. And it's very complicated, but it's really important. It affects a lot of money and it affects a lot of libraries. But just to put it in context also, in case you don't remember this number, we do have about 1,250 members altogether across Rails. So you can see from the membership, the total membership of all the LSAPs is, 386 libraries. So you can see there's a lot of libraries that are not members of LSAPs, and we serve them as well. And trying to balance that is a very one of the most important and difficult things that we do.
And that was a great presentation. Thank you. There's a lot of information there to read too, so everybody's got to do their homework.
Thanks, Tom.
Excuse me, I just wanted
Thanks
everyone
again.
to know that Hallie Cox has joined the meeting.
Hi, Hallie.
Oh, Hallie. On to the report from the State Library. Greg?
We actually have no report today to share, so thank you.
Wow.
That's weird.
Thank you, Greg. So on to new business. Want to discuss that, Deidre?
Is that the, sorry, I lost my agenda there.
Jenna?
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. So, yes, we are, as you know, Jenna Nemec-Louise unfortunately did have to resign from the board. So we are in the process of going through the process of how we fill a vacancy when it's not an election time. We have asked for volunteer people to, self-nominate, volunteer to fill the seat. Obviously, it has to be a school librarian, a member of a staff member of a school library. I think we have 4 or 5 nominations that have been submitted at this point, and it does close on September 30th, so that's next week. And then the process that we go through is that the executive committee meets and interviews, discusses the candidates, the various candidates' experience, et cetera, and then select one, and we'll bring that back to the board as well. So hopefully sometime in October, we will be done.
So the executive board selects the person?
Executive committee of this
Committee, that's
board,
what I mean.
yes, they interview and,
And then, okay.
yeah,
And then we bring forth that nominee
Right.
at the meeting after that takes place. And in line with this, Jenna was the
right.
chairman of the advocacy committee. So we are searching for a new chair for the advocacy committee. So if anyone's interested, either send Deidre or I an email and we can go through it that way.
Yep.
Okay. Well, with that being said, it's on to 8.2, the annual report.
Yes, thank you. So this is the time of year that every year we do the annual report to the State Library on September 30th. And it's a very lengthy and detailed report with that they provide us with the outline and many appendices. We do not give everything to you for this meeting. We give you the narrative report because the rest of it is, it's a very lengthy, and this is really the meat of it. So as you can see, it follows, the narrative follows our strategic plan goals and reports on activities that we have accomplished in the areas of resource sharing, including delivery, cooperative purchasing, and networking. Also, the advocacy work that we've done with ILA and IL and other, the My Library Is campaign and other ways. Also CE, of course, a lot about COVID, naturally, because it was, a big year for the pandemic. Also for the future, preparing libraries for the future, a lot of EDI there, the census grant, and then, the organizational excellence goal. And I guess the highlight there is that, receiving the Atkinson Award, although that's certainly not the only thing. As also part of the annual report is the annual audit, which you're going to hear about next from one of the auditors at Laudbach and Amin. So I am happy to answer any questions about the narrative report, and the full report is available to you if anytime you want to look at it. It asks for how many vehicles we have and how many miles they have on them, and salary information is also required. That's so. This is not a report that you approve, it's a report that you accept. And then we send it on to the State Library. Any questions about anything?
Okay, with no questions, may I have a motion for approval of the narrative report as part of the Rails fiscal year 21 annual report submitted to the State Library? Okay, Chris moves.
Second.
Second, Alice, thank you.
Call the roll.
Okay.
Sorry.
Roll. Emily, can you call a roll?
Sure. Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Kelly Cox,
Yes.
Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Karen Wojcik,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes. Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Emily. Next, we have Jim and Don Shaw with the audit.
Well, we completed the 10th annual financial report and audit of the Illinois, of reaching across Illinois
10 years.
library system. It's my final time through. It went fine as always. And that's about all I have to say about it. But Don Shaw of Waterbach and Amen will give the presentation on the financial report. And as Deidre said, we will ask for your acceptance. And the reason we do that rather than asking for an approval is that Waterbach is an independent accounting firm, and to say that we approve it is kind of impairing their independence, I think, giving
True.
a impression that it's subject to our approval. So that is why we do that.
All right,
Don,
thank
you
you.
may take it from there.
All right,
You can
thank
have
you.
a seat if you'd like.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I first would like to thank Jim and Sharon for all their help in making this another successful audit year, as it has been every other year. And congratulations to Jim on the retirement coming here soon. So
Still have 2 more months.
yes, not that you're counting, right? So without their help, this wouldn't be possible. So I really appreciate all their hard work. I'm first going to walk through the annual financial report with you. And I apologize, I only have a hard copy. So when I say a page number, it's going to be at the bottom. If you turn to page 1, you'll find our Waterbach and Naaman letterhead. This is our independent audit report in which we gave a clean, unmodified opinion that basically states that we didn't find any issues with internal controls or any issues with the numbers as they were presented that would otherwise alter our opinion. If you skip about 3 more pages, you'll find the management discussion and analysis. This really provides a summary of how the year performed in narrative form. So if you have questions on fluctuations from year to year or what the numbers truly mean, this is where you'd want to go to find those answers. Your individual fund financial statements will begin on page 15. And the individual fund financial statements will start with your balance sheet. And on the far right column towards the bottom, you'll notice that the library's total fund balance was at $23 million. About 20.5 or 89% of this is related to your general fund, which is your main operating fund. To see how this fund performed in the current year, we can skip ahead 2 pages to what would be your income statement. So on page 17, you'll find your income statement. And towards the bottom of the page, you'll notice that the general fund had a net increase of about $5.9 million. This is primarily due to the timing of your per capita grants. Within the fiscal year, you receive 50% of the 2020 per capita grant and 100% of the 2021 per capita grant. Where historically, it depends on the timing. Historically, it's been 50-50. This year, the state was actually more timely on sending those distributions. Turning 2 more pages, you'll find the notes to the financial statement. This really provides further detail into how we came up with the figures that we did with supporting schedules. Within there, you're going to find your capital asset and your long-term debt schedules. I'm not going to go through those with you in detail today. So if you jump all the way to page 43, page 43 is the start of your budgetary information. So if you want to see how a fund performed based on what was budgeted, this would be where you would want to go. And I'll just point out on the far right column where it says the totals, that first line, you'll notice that the per capita grants were budgeted at about $10 million, and what actual was about 15 million. So that's related to more per capita grants coming in than expected. Does anyone have?
I might add, our expenditures did come in under budget. They were slightly, very close to what we presented when we initially presented the June financials at the late July board meeting. So no real surprises. We added a few more expenses, but it was very close. And a lot of our variance under budget was really pandemic related or deferring the laptop computers, but no real surprises from what we initially presented. And also on the statement of net position, which increased 2.1 million, that's our overall position on a, it was 2.1 million increase. 1.9 million of that was an increase in our net pension asset. We do not have a pension liability, but we had a large increase in the pension asset. So we are very, very well funded. I think it's around 110% funded with IMRF. So my pension is very secure. And I'm very happy about that. So does anybody have any questions? Anything we haven't covered?
If not,
So we would just ask for your vote on the acceptance of the.
Yes, and thank you. That was
yes,
very
thank
clear
you.
and excellent. Thank you.
Jim, having spent the majority of the day yesterday with you, I know you're completely focused toward retirement. Which is good, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I've got a few things still to do here on the transition.
Yes, you do. Don't get carried away.
Won't let it be too dominant. You'll get here soon enough.
It's true.
Because I announced this almost pretty much at the start of the year, and 9 months has flown by since it's gone by very quickly.
Don, thank you for the presentation. It was, it's a lot of studying on that document as well.
Yes, thank you.
May I have a motion for acceptance of the audit report for fiscal year 2021?
So moved.
So move, Karen.
Second, Hallie.
Hallie, second. Okay. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Hallie Cox,
Yes.
Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Karen Voidick,
Yes.
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Motion carried. Now on to 8.4, board compliance with statutes. Deidre?
Yes, thank you. And Emily has a document she's going to share. So there's a memo in the packet about this. And you'll see that this memo comes from Julie Tappendorf. This is document 8.4. And it's dated 2015. We just wanted to let you take this opportunity now, since we're doing the annual report, of explaining that in 2015, the state library asked us to, or added something to the area per capita grant application. This is it, this that you can see on the screen, which I know you can't see very well, but every row is is related to the topics that are in this memo. These are the various laws that board members have to be in compliance with. So of course, that's a lot to ask, and it's a lot for us to try to find out. So we asked Julie, and it's a lot of work for you to understand if you are in compliance with these laws. So there's two things. This memo is a brief overview of all of the laws, and then at the end, at the last page is also well, it just goes through all of the various laws, and then what we're asked to stipulate here in this is that to the best of our knowledge, you are all in compliance with these various laws, which is why we provide you with this summary of all the laws. So you don't have to do anything today. I'm just explaining this because what we'll do when we're getting ready to do the area per capita grant next year is send you more information and ask you to reply in an email to Emily that yes, you are in compliance. So, and in the meantime, we're happy to provide any more information that you might need about these laws. It's just one of these compliance things that board members, of government or public entities have to do. That's it.
That's it. Okay, thank you for that. And next we have Monica and Cindy Fessmeyer with the strategic planning update.
Thank you, Tom. And before I introduce Cindy for the activity that we were outlining, we just wanted to call your attention to the memo that came along with your board packet around strategic planning, just to let you know a little bit about how that process is continuing to move forward. So you saw a note in your board packet that gave you an update, including the membership of the steering committee. So we want to thank all of these Rails members, Rails staff, and Rails board members who are part of this steering committee and putting in that additional effort. In addition to that, we had put out a call for people who were interested in serving on the steering committee, and we got so many wonderful, qualified respondents who wanted to be part of that steering committee, and we had such a limited group that we were able to put that in. So we wanted to, again, thank everybody who had an interest and who was interested in moving that forward. But we're really excited that the process is really getting started. On the second page includes a description of some of the upcoming discussions, including today. So today's, as a result of the poll, we're going to have that discussion as part of our meeting. And then I especially want to call your attention to the October 22nd meeting. The board found it most convenient to have that 90-minute meeting on October 22nd at 10:30 a.m. So that would be, that morning meeting. We'll have the 90 minutes, take a break, and then you'll settle into your regular board meeting. November 19th, we would just include that board check-in as part of the regular board meeting, and then we will continue to do a poll about the January meeting that would present the draft plan for strategic planning. So any questions about that process or any of the upcoming meetings before we move on? Yes, hi Karen.
Can I ask a question about did you get to the Rails member update meeting?
Oh, not yet, but if you'd like to.
Well, I just want to know if it's going to be video. If you can't watch it right then, can you watch it later on in the day?
Yes, our Rails member updates are generally recorded and then also shared via the Rails YouTube channel. And so they're a great opportunity to watch some of those things and hear that if you can't attend. And that's a great segue into some of these things that are coming up. And so we want to not only call your attention to some of these meetings that are coming up, but also encourage you. And I know this is part of what you'll be talking about with Cindy, so I don't want to take too much of that piece. But I do want you to know that these things are coming up. Especially, I want to call your attention to some of the groups that have been harder to get to some of these meetings. And that includes school libraries, special libraries, trustees. We have some meetings that, as a result of our ISLE partnership meetings, they let us know that a 4 o'clock start is best for some of the school librarians. And we thought that might also be better maybe for some trustees or folks that have other obligations during the day. And those meetings so far are our lowest registration. So we also want to especially encourage, if we can get people to know about those and to know those are available to them, to come and move forward. Of course, we have lots of time before The registrations are complete, but we definitely want to encourage people to attend because this is such an important part of our process. So we are delighted that all of this is moving forward, and we are excited about those processes. But are there any questions about any of the upcoming meetings that are on the schedule? Okay, then without any further ado, I am going to hand it over to our consultant, Cindy Fessmeyer, for the discussion today.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Good to see you all again. I'm just going to reiterate a little bit of what Monica was saying, and I think a big role that you all can play in this strategic planning effort is to simply amplify the message that you're hearing from Rails with the communities that you serve, and make sure that folks who are in sort of your neck of the woods or your kind of library are represented by making sure that you share announcements with those folks. So that's really valuable for you to sort of delve into your networks to do that for us. So what we're going to do today is, and at this point, the slideshow could start, whoever's running it. Or I can also share my screen. I know you said, okay, terrific.
It's coming.
Okay, groovy. Thanks, Monica. Okay. So today we're going to be doing an exercise together called community mapping. What community mapping is you just taking a moment out of your busy day and kind of thinking about who you know professionally related to libraries throughout Rails. So this is important because, as Monica just mentioned, there are a number of ways for people to engage in this process. Chief amongst them and coming up is those town hall meetings that start next month. In addition to those, we're also going to be conducting some combination of focus groups and one-on-one interviews with people. Now, we want to make sure, among you, you know plenty of people, but we want to make sure that we are talking to the right people and that we are getting interesting opinions from people, not just sort of the usual thing that we might expect. So to do so, we're going to spend a little time delving into our own networks. And next slide, please. And we're going to do that by mapping our communities. Now, this is just sort of a way to visualize what we're going to be doing today. And you don't need to take notes. There's a slide that's going to have all this stuff for you. But I will encourage you at this point, if you haven't already, to find yourself some paper, a pen, or open a blank document on your laptop, whatever works for you, because you are going to be doing a brainstorm in just a minute or two. So at the center of strategic planning is, of course, Rails, but then there's you and the organization that you work with or volunteer for, and that organization has many, many tendrils out in the community that it serves. So this is an example from, I think this would actually pertain to any kind of library type in any rural, urban municipality, but your organization is at the center. And branching off of it, there's lots of different kinds of individuals and organizations. So business community, local government, specific community populations, faith groups, local individual leaders, local organizations, state resources, other library organizations, library groups like foundations, boards, friends, K-12, those schools within the communities, and other things too that might be pertinent to your kind of information organization. So the way that I've used this in the past, if we can have the next slide, please, is I got this very sheet handed in front of me and I sat down and I dumped my brain onto that piece of paper. Well, we're not doing that today. Ours is going to be a little more ordered than this, but I show you this sample as just a way to point out that you'll find that a number of people or organizations will come up multiple times in the different kinds of groups that are on that sort of octopus diagram. And when I was doing it, I started drawing arrows between them to say, oh, this guy who's on Rotary is also with the Hospital Foundation, and this woman who's the band booster is also with the PTA or whatever. And I want to say if somebody or some organization comes up a number of times like that, I want you to take particular notice about that person because they're probably, some kind of mover and shaker within the community served. So if that starts happening to you, if you start mentally doing like the arrows that I drew to connect people on my old community map, that's a tip to you that that's somebody that we want to pay attention to. Next slide, please. So we are going to map our communities. You're doing this for the place, the geographical place that houses the organization that is the reason that you're sitting in this meeting today. So your library that you're representing, your consortium that you're representing, I want you to be wearing that hat, thinking about that community served. And we're going to just for 5 minutes, sort of start writing, and the categories will come back for you in just a moment, so don't worry about that. But what I'm going to suggest is before we get started, review the categories that'll be on the next slide and start with an easy one. Start with one that it's like, oh, K-12s, yes, I got that, and just start listing them. Start easy and get more difficult, but do try to put somebody or some organization under each of the categories. We're going to do this for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is going to go really fast in the beginning, and then you're going to be done 3 minutes in. But trust me, I want you to keep thinking. I'll give you a 1 minute warning when you have a minute to go. So do your best to write for 5 solid minutes. Even though it's going to feel long, there are still people in there that you need to sort of dump onto your piece of paper or onto your screen. Can we have the next slide, please? So this is that list of groups just to get you thinking. There are certainly others that could be on this bulleted list, and do please make note of those people. By no means is this an exhaustive list. Before we get started, before I start my timer for 5 minutes of doing your brain dump of your network serving your information organization, does anybody have any questions? Okay, that was a pretty good teacher pause. So now we're going to get started. Pick up your pen, fingers on the keyboard. I'm starting a timer. Literally 5 minutes begins now. Okay, so the majority of you who are here today were at our last meeting where together we did a round robin and we shared what we were thinking on a different topic, but we're going to do the same thing for this stakeholder brainstorming that we're doing. So we're going to start in one location with one person and go around and give everybody the opportunity to speak. And I'll just give that same reminder that if you are typically a quiet person, please know that we value your voice and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. If you're typically a talker, please be brief and focus on listening. And for all of you, you have just done a lot of writing, so you know what you're going to be talking about. But please do listen closely as people are talking. We want to try not to duplicate things, or if a lot of people had somebody on your list, that's something that we're going to want to capture as well. So I'm going to ask Monica to just sort of name a location, and then somebody there will kick you off. But what we're going to be doing is I want you to simply name a person or organization that really rose to the top for you that will provide valuable input to our planning looking into the future, and who might represent a voice that wouldn't typically be present in a process like this in the past. So we were looking to be very inclusive and equitable in our approach to who we talk to. So keep that at the top of your mind, and we're going to go around and each say one person. We've got the trustee Emily taking some notes, but don't worry, I'll talk next about how you're going to just share your work with us in general. So Monica, do you want to kick us off and sort of get folks talking?
Yeah, let's start in East Peoria today. Are there any thoughts from East Peoria?
Well, okay. Well, like, I'm not sure if I really completely understand business community. Would that be, we have a local movie theater owner that was very instrumental during the pandemic in donating to different projects within our community, local government, like the mayor, the city council, specific community populations, teachers, business leaders, church ministerial. I don't know if I'm on the right track or not.
Actually, you're doing great. Pick
Okay.
pick just your one or two from any of the topics who rose to the top, and
Okay.
name a specific organization or a specific person, not just a kind of organization. So like your movie theater guy was a perfect example of probably somebody who we want to hear from.
Yes, okay.
So if there's maybe one other one that really rises to the top for you, please share that.
I don't know, our mayor, he's very instrumental in, communicating with our community along with the city council.
Perfect. So
Okay, I'll
if you
pass it on.
would, yeah, kind of star those on your list. And you're going to have
Okay.
the opportunity to share that information with the folks at Rails after this meeting. So keep track of those folks. Who's
Okay.
next?
Well, same thing. I'm like Susan. I hope I'm doing this right. But Mary Adamowski, who is the library director at Orland Park, I met her years ago. And we were both on the Rebecca Cottle committee, the evaluators, and I was on the steering committee for 17 years, and we got to know each other. And from her, I met her several times at ILA, and then we started presenting together. And then from that, from Rebecca Cottle being on the steering committee, then I began as a representative for Children's Choice Award with the Illinois Reading Council, which that kind of furthered my introduction to and friendships with some school librarians throughout the state who also participated. And then my volunteer work at the McLean County History Museum put me in contact with Guy Fraker, who is a Lincoln Scholar here in Illinois, and we're working on a project together. I also was introduced through Guy to other people, to the Questers Group, which their continuing education, their group of senior women. And we collect and we go to different parts of the state, and we have educational programs.
Terrific.
About
I'm going to stop you there. You clearly have a vast list, but let's make sure that we get a chance to get around to everybody. Thank you for that. I look forward to seeing your full list. For the next person, please just mention your top 1, 2, or 3 who really rose to the top for you as someone important that might have interesting opinions. Yeah.
This is Robin, and I'll just mention one that I'm thinking of because there's multiple people would be involved with this, would be like our District 150 school district. There's the library, overall library manager, Mary Yates. And then like in some of the different schools, like the Washington Gifted School, there would be Kelly Reardon. There's another library manager at one of the other primary schools, Liz Corey. And, just kind of, get them together and to have them give their input.
Thanks, especially for thinking about school libraries. That's heavy on our mind as well. Thank you. Who's next?
Let's move to Burr Ridge.
Well, I guess we're just jumping in. Okay. We have an ex-board member. Her name's Eva Porter, and she is now a board member on U46 School District Board, and I think she would be an asset. And then her husband is Herb, and he is active as a village trustee for Hanover Park. So they're both really active in the community.
Terrific. Thank you.
One of my top people is Keisha Houston. She is our library board president, and she is also an assistant principal at one of the local schools. And so she crosses those boundaries too and represents multiple groups.
Perfect. Thank you.
This is Becky. One of the biggest groups in our community that actually crosses, it's centered in LaGrange, but it crosses all the way over to Berwyn, all the way east-west, is Pillars Community Health. And their director, Angela Curran, lives in our community, and does a lot of work, and they provide physical and mental health services to everyone and anyone in the community, but with a specific to those who can't afford it. And they have programs with literacy, especially ESL for already that they work with the library, but they know the community who have the greatest need very well already and have done their own strategic planning. And my husband's on their board, so I know what they're doing.
I love that.
But she
Thank
lives
you.
in the community, so yeah.
Terrific.
Okay, I'll go next. I have Jennifer Campbell, the Limestone High School librarian. Prior to that, she was at Galesburg and had all K through 12. So she's, the other one is Derek Romer, our township supervisor. And Derek is everywhere. You see him everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, he is just, he knows everybody. So those
We love those people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Terrific. Next, please.
Bravo. This is Karen. And I was thinking of my library director, Jenny Mills. She's also the head of like either Rotary or Kiwanis or one of those types of groups. I can't remember which one. And oh gosh, a bunch of other things. Her husband is Paul Mills, who just left Rails board, and he is head of library director at Fountaindale. So those two together would be really good ones to talk to.
Thank you.
That inspiration from listening to all of you kind of got me on a good track. So thank you for, thank you for helping me shake some ideas loose. One of our current board members is also a board member at Wheaton Public. So she has a kind of some multiple lines of connection and investment in libraries and higher education. That's Christine Fenney. She's our current vice chair of the board, and she's past president of Wheaton Public Board. So I think she'd be a great person. The other, I just kind of throw in as a second one here is student leadership. I think we have a student trustee and we have student body presidents that are very active and engaged, and they're difficult to include their voices in this process. So I will be looking to them.
I like
Great.
that.
Thank
Off
you.
the top of my head.
I like that.
You have
idea.
time. It's all good. Thank
I have to
you.
look everybody's name up.
That's everybody at Burridge. I know there are some board members joining us from Zoom. Would you like to speak up with your answer?
I'm adding to mine because LT has that too on their board. They have students.
This is Beth Teppen. I am representing Silvis Public Library. And so I wasn't quite sure to what extent these people would be asked to participate, but one member, former member of the Silvis Board of Trustees, Tony Trulson, he's now an alderman, and I'm pretty sure he's active in LULAC, which is the League of Latin American Citizens. I may be thinking of the wrong person as far as connected with that, but certainly in our community, that'd be an important group to try to tap into.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And then Hallie, was there anything you wanted to share? Nothing from Hallie. I think that's everybody.
Wonderful. Thanks, y'all, for playing along. And I was really happy to hear that a couple of you drew inspiration from hearing the folks who spoke before you, which that much more kudos to the people who spoke first for just taking a chance and being brave. Thank you for that. So what we're going to do now, could I have the next slide, please? Asking you to make a personal commitment to invite one person from your list to to the town halls, right? We have the links to all of them coming up next month. So extend a personal invitation by way of whatever works best for you, a Facebook message, a text, an email, a phone call, whatever way is the best way for you to communicate with that person. Invite them personally to the town hall, please. Just say, you know, Tony, I think it's really important that you be here. I hope you can find the time, or something like that. Or I intend to be at this one. Won't you please join me? Something like that. So in addition to that, We would very much like to collect the brainstorm that you just did, and we're asking you to please put that into an email and send that to Emily, and Emily's going to keep track of that for us. And when you do that, if there's somebody who is particularly important to talk to, we can consider putting them into a focus group conversation or doing a one-on-one interview. So if you would make a note of who might be particularly important for a focus group or an interview, we would like to hear that from you. And again, it's through the lens of hearing folks we wouldn't typically hear from. So people of color, people from smaller towns, people from different educational backgrounds. That's who we want to talk to hear what their service needs look like. Does anyone have any questions about this commitment that you're making to personally share an email inviting someone to a town hall, somebody from your list, and then sharing your list, please, with Emily, with any notes about people in particular that you think we ought to know as we're forming these invitations to participate. Any questions?
This is Karen.
Yeah.
This is Karen. When you send it, say I want to send an email to somebody to invite them to a town hall, is there a certain blurb that you could say this is what the town halls are about? Because I could get really wordy and then get confused.
We could send some sample language if you're interested in
that.
that.
That'd be good. Short to the point. Otherwise, I'll be like, well, I'm really not sure, but it should be like this, and then no one's going to want to go.
And I actually created my own search on the webpage just before we started for the town hall, so I could send it to my library so they could get people from my library. So I could, you can do that on the search function.
That would be helpful for me.
Absolutely.
It's a great
So did I
idea.
hear Monica say that you would share that language?
Yeah, we
Okay,
will. It'll
great,
come
great,
from Emily
perfect.
or from myself.
But don't they need an L2 to sign up? So how would we do that?
There, what we can do is have a blurb that includes the link to the registrations.
That'd be helpful
Yes,
because
and so then they could go and actually sign themselves up. But yes,
That'd be
so
good.
the L2 login is key though.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions about what you're committing to? I will say also just amplifying the opportunities for people to participate is really, really important. That especially makes sure that your part of the state or your kind of library is going to be represented in the process. Okay, next slide. Here's the all-important deadline. So if you could do that sharing with Emily by about a week from now, that is ideal. If you're like me, I might recommend doing it right away before it just falls right out of your brain after this meeting. So
I will send a reminder as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
This is Becky. I have another question. Are we supposed to copy anyone when we send that plea? Or should we just send it on our own?
I think you'll need to send it on your own because otherwise we're talking about a walking quorum, right, Monica and Dee? So we don't want the whole board to be CC'd
No, not
on
if I
it.
like copied Monica or I don't know. What would you prefer?
I mean, I think if you'd like to copy someone, that's certainly something. But if you have more of a personal relationship with this person and
I
you'd
just didn't know
rather
if
it
you
just
wanted a
feel more
record.
personal, I think that's fine too.
I can
But
do
no,
it.
good question.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, I misunderstood. Any other questions? Thanks for playing along. I look forward to diversifying the folks that we are going to be talking to because you have a vested interest in making sure that we hear that voice. Thank you. That's it for me.
That's all.
Okay. Well,
thanks, Cindy.
Yes, thanks, Cindy. Now it's on to board development. How Rails board members can take advantage of L2. Brian, it's up to you here.
Hey, I'm here and I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. Slideshow started.
Hey, Brian, can you increase your volume a little bit?
Sorry, I forgot to put my microphone near my mouth. Is that better?
Well, that worked wonders. Thank you.
Okay, and okay, L2 for Rails board members. I'm Brian Smith. I'm a web developer here at Rails, and basically I'm a librarian who builds websites. L2 is a website that functions as a directory of libraries and personnel affiliated with the libraries, a calendar of training, meetings, and other events. L2 is statewide. It's not just limited to Rails. It was and continues to be developed through grants from the Illinois State Library, and it's online at librarylearning.org. And if you go to librarylearning.org and you're not logged in, you will see a nice big friendly login form here. Logging into L2, you would log in using the email address on your L2 account and your L2 password. Even though you all have at board.railslibraries.info email addresses, being on the Rails board, that's not the email address you would use. There'd be your account would have been set up with a different email. If you've forgotten your password, there is a link, forgot password link, that you can enter your email address and you'll be sent a link to reset your L2 password. Your L2, the same L2 account login is also used on the Rails website, Rails support websites for several services that libraries can participate in, the My Library Is website, and several of the catalog consortium support sites. Prairie Cat and Swan sites have used L2 logins for quite a while. CCS, I think, is still developing their new website that will be using them. And when you are logged into L2, you'll have an account menu tab. Top link on there is for my dashboard. And when you go to your dashboard, it's all about you. You'll see cards of your library affiliations. Each of you will have at least 2 of these cards, one for the library that you're at and the other for your board position at Rails. You may notice that email addresses here are different. These email addresses are connected with that particular affiliation, not connected with each other. They're not necessarily the same as your account login email address. If you need to edit any of the information in your affiliation, for example, you're now the library board treasurer, you can edit that and make the corrections and add other information. If you do need to change your email address that you use to log in with, you can do that using the Edit User Account button. For those of you who are library directors or have other administrative privileges with your libraries, you'll also have a button in your dashboard to get a report of your staff's registration for events in L2. As I'd mentioned before, L2 functions as the directory and events calendar. Both of those have prominent links in the website menu. If you go into the directory, there's a basic search for libraries, keyword search, and several different facets that you can filter on. There's also an advanced search option. If you click on the name of any library, then that will go to that library building's profile in the directory, where there's going to be a lot of information about the library. As you scroll down the page, you'll see more information. Scrolling down, and near the bottom, there's going to be the library's annual certification history. Starting this year, the annual certification that's required of all system members is being done through L2. And so starting this year, every library's certification will be part of its profile. If you go into the advanced search for libraries, there are a lot of different facets that can be selected to do some fairly sophisticated searching for different libraries. For example, if we wanted all public libraries that serve a population between 25,000 and 75,000 and are in the 3rd Illinois Congressional District, we get that and we get our list of those libraries. At the bottom of the page is going to be a button where you can download that list into a format that you can put into Excel and do other things with. Similarly, for people, library staff members, library board members, there's a nice simple search for that, as well as an advanced search. And in that advanced search, you can perform get reports, such as if you wanted library board presidents who are at libraries in Will County that serve population between 25,000 and 75,000, and you would get that list. And again, there's a download button at the bottom that you can retrieve that report. In the events portion of the L2 website is the calendar of meetings, trainings, webinars, etc. There are a number of different organizations that can add events as sponsors on L2. Illinois State Library, the library systems, the catalog consortia, and there are currently more than 70 networking groups and other organizations that are able to add their events onto the calendar. And I do recommend that you are logged into the L2 website, because not only a lot of what I showed you for the directory, getting those reports, you would need to be logged in for, but for events, a lot of events do require you to be logged in to view or to register for. Something like a Rails board meeting is a public event that does not require being logged in, but certain continuing education events by Rails or training events from the catalog consortia, you do need to be logged in for those. In the events, there's a variety of searches that can be run to find events that you're interested in. For example, you can select the topic of trustee development and find matching events for that. You can select webinars on the topic of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to get those events. You can click on the title of an event in your results to see the details for the event. If there's a purple register button, that's an event that you're able to register for through the L2 registration system. And if you click on that button to register, you would select the location you would be attending at. There can be multiple locations because an event may have several video conference sites, or it may be a hybrid event that is both in person and online. So you would select the location you're attending at, as well as your affiliation that you're attending as a representative of. And then when you register for the event, you will be emailed a confirmation of your registration at the email address for the affiliation that you've selected. In your account menu, there is a link for My Events where you can look at all of the events that you've registered for through L2. It's not going to include registrations that you'd be making through Zoom's registration system or GoTo or something external to L2. But anything you've registered for through the L2 registration will be available here as a report. There's also a learning log tab there that is a tool that you can use to keep a record of events that you attend that are not listed on L2. Here's my learning log here. I go to a number of meetings related to the website software that we use. If you do need assistance with using L2, in the footer of every page, there's a link for contact and help, which goes to librarylearning.org/help. There are a number of instruction sheets, but most importantly, there's a form for contacting the L2 help desk. And a number of us at Rails do attend to help desk tickets and will assist you as we can. Are there any questions?
I have kind of a question that's, thinking maybe somebody in a management role might have a sense of this, or maybe just from the group. What's more common practice? Is it typical for a lot of you to have like all of your staff create an L2 account when they're hired and just kind of everybody's in L2 and ready to go? I know we're pretty spotty, and I've thought about trying to be more like it's just part of the onboarding process. Just kind of curious, am I kind of an outlier, or is that, is it typical for it to be more like me, where it's people who need in get it log in?
I think we're spotty too.
Yeah.
Yeah, spotty. I know that though we have a newer director, so she's made an effort to get everybody in. It is part of the onboarding process now, also for trustees.
We really need everybody to be in L2 because so much of our, library staff in particular, so much of our communication with libraries is through L2. Particularly about for example, delivery. We have delivery strings, email strings related to delivery. Now, I know this doesn't necessarily affect anybody in this room, but you can probably think of people in your organization. So when we have issues in delivery or, weather closings or, route problems, one of the first things that happens is that it goes out to the email list to delivery. And so if your people who deal with delivery are not in L2 or not signed up for L2, then we don't have any way of probably of knowing who they are. Right, Brian?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Library employees who have certain positions tagged in on their L2 affiliations automatically get added onto those email distributions.
The way we communicate with, sorry, Tom, when I was in Oak Park, I paid no attention to L2. And when I got here, I was like, whoa, that is not good.
I was just thinking that information's only as good as what you put into it, right? So the key people, I know my key staff that are in delivery roles have an account, they're in there, they're getting messages, but there's probably 80% of the staff that have very low contact or have never even created an account because they don't register for something unless their supervisor encourages them and they get them set up and all of that. But I was just thinking, I need to build an administrative process around your onboarded, you need a new position, you need to update your account. To make best value of this, that would be a best practice to push out to our membership. Use this for look at these wonderful features, but you're not going to find the other people who have the same job as you in the same kind of library. You're never going to find that unless we keep it up to date.
Exactly.
Jennifer, to get your point there too, when we started the trustee noon roundtable things, I went around to a couple of libraries in my area and talked to the trustees about it and signed up to L2, and I got a lot of deer in the headlight looks. What was L2?
Right.
So and the directors sort of apologizes. Oh yeah, we need to get them in the system. So Brian, I have a question for you on the calendar view.
Yes.
Is there any way to make the individual dates longer and not have the +7 events at the bottom of each date?
I hate that. Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the
legal,
things. That's one of our things that's on our list of feature requests that we will be revisiting soon. There are a few different design elements enhancements that we're looking that we're looking to.
It's when I'm looking at my calendar, it's easier to look at another calendar versus a whole list of things.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Gotcha.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for Brian?
Not a question. I just want to thank Jennifer for, that would be a best practice and is probably something that we should think about.
Is it just library staff are you talking about or the library board?
Yeah, we want definitely
everybody.
Trustees in.
Maybe it should be like a spotlight in a member update at some point.
That's a good idea. When we did the last year, a year or so ago, we did that big.
I remember.
And there were trustee training event about COVID, with Heartland and the State Library and ILA. We got so many new registrants on, so many new trustee registrants on L2. It was incredible. It was great, but it was like a good news, bad news that so many trustees all along weren't registered, because you can just, there's so much information, you know, it's so rich. But you're right, if it's not complete, it's like a library catalog, right?
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
I didn't know you spelled your name with 2 Y's though.
That is my alter ego account that I use for testing and demonstrations.
Brian.
Now you know why those emails didn't go through.
I know, right?
He's been hiding in plain sight.
Okay, now it's time for the board member reports. Does anyone have anything they want to share about things going on in news in their area or their library? It must not be busy at the library.
Well, I only have things to share, so I'm not sharing.
So, okay, so it's time for meeting recap and agenda building for the next Rails board meeting.
Yes, so I would say for the recap, we have some strategic planning information to get to Emily. I think we have some work to do on L2. And perhaps we will have, hopefully, we will have information or a recommendation for the school library seat when at the October meeting.
And on that part, it looks like Emily's got everybody really working toward that too.
Yes, she's already got meetings get. Yeah, we don't like to have a vacancy. So
that's right.
Yeah. And Emily loves her doodle polls. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, I did learn that you don't answer them twice. Okay.
I do have something regarding agenda building though.
Yeah.
So I believe I'm on deck for November to give another academic library presentation. And I guess since we just, Sarah and I did one last spring, it hasn't really been all that long. I guess I would kind of like to know from the board, what would be of interest to you? I want to go out to my constituents and bring some ideas to you of things that they think that you should know. But I'd kind of like to know, what do you not know about academic libraries in Illinois that are in the Rails area what can I focus on that would be of use and benefit to you?
Okay.
If you don't know right this minute, feel free to follow up with me by email, but I would very much like your what's on your mind. Anyone have anything?
Yeah, I do. Now that everything is based, a lot of information is based on the internet. Did you see your usage of your library go down?
The impact of virtual, how virtual services
Or do you
change.
try to, tell your students that you have certain subscriptions to certain things that would, be more benefit for them to come in and log in?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know,
It's
like-
a big, interesting topic to unpack.
Yeah,
in
well,
and of itself, so-
how does the library benefit the student other than having a book, books there because, say they have to do a research topic. Well, everything is on the internet. Not everything, but you know what I mean? A lazy student is going to think that.
Right.
Everything's on the internet.
She's speaking as a lazy student.
Yeah.
We're talking to Paul behind his desk.
Perhaps
My
talking
son
about library
would say,
instruction programs.
Why do I have to go in there? You know what I mean?
That leads to kind of what I want to say.
Yeah.
Um,
I can
did
give
you work
the
in
elevator
academics?
speech on my, okay.
So Jennifer,
I think that's good.
Jennifer, in the work we're doing with Rails with the school libraries also, and because I know there are so many, like just at my high school, there are high school kids in college programs. I don't know what they call that, right? Like
Dual credit.
yeah, dual credit with multiple different institutions,
Mhm.
including community colleges that aren't COD, even though we're in COD. So how are academic libraries in general in Illinois working with secondary students because they're coming into colleges? And so how are we preparing them for using the academic library? I don't know if there's any work.
That's been discussed with ISLE too.
Okay, well, I'm really interested in how that's going because as somebody who has a new college student who learned to use the library this summer at her college, and as having a kid who's in an Indiana University program through his high school, like just interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. How long do I have?
I know.
Do it all.
I mean, it can wait, but
no, those are all really important topics. That
Yeah.
I think I can give you.
I have another one. I would, and this
she asked.
I would love to know about, open educational resources.
Yes.
Textbooks and all that stuff, because.
How about a status on of what's going on with OER in Illinois? Because there have been some.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So maybe that's a whole, maybe you have to, we'll just space them out, Jennifer, really, but whatever you can do.
See, I could bring a colleague to who is really in a critical role on OER to
That'd be
address
great.
that specifically. And that might be worthy of a separate presentation. I can absolutely touch on it, but.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Lola can follow up on
Okay.
that and see what makes most sense.
And Jennifer, I think related to what Karen was talking about, just the importance of library liaisons and like instruction programs, like within the college and academic environment.
Mm-hmm.
What about them? Just how that works?
Yeah, like what their role is, in terms of guiding students, like that whole, like everything on the internet, is on the internet attitude, and what the library liaison, what their role is in terms of managing those expectations.
Even the library itself, I mean, does it call people in? Do they say, look, we have study rooms, we have areas where you can talk quietly, but doesn't have to be quiet, you know what I mean? So that you can have big groups come in and do group projects. We're open at midnight when some kids, that's their only time they have.
My friends who are
That kind of
academic
thing.
programs in
No,
this-
All that.
All of
Absolutely.
that.
all the
Yeah, that'd be
classes
easy,
these 2 months.
right?
Yeah. You run an outreach team.
Diane,
Jennifer, I have one thing too.
I see you, Diane.
Okay.
No, Diane has her hand up.
Yes, I have a question. I just would like to know the overall prevailing policies between academic libraries and the public library in the same town. Do they acknowledge each other's cards? Is there reciprocal borrowing or what is that? Is there a prevailing overall policy? I don't need the exact number, but I just want to know what plans they have or what's in place. I'm very curious about that.
Academic
Because
library.
I bet that varies.
Yeah.
Like Elmhurst, they're across the street.
Yeah.
So.
All these are such good topics.
Need a second page.
I might. I'm glad I brought a notebook, guys. We need a standing agenda item. Okay.
Very interesting, I can't.
Great. These are all things that.
Aren't you glad you asked?
I know, right? Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go out to my people and say, what do they want to see? You guys have plenty of questions yourself.
Jennifer, what I was going to say was all the work that your staff's done with the individual groups in the, you have a librarian assigned to a certain curriculum and how that works.
That's the liaison thing. So you're on the same page. Yeah, great. Another vote for liaison understanding.
Okay. Anything else for agenda building?
No, I think it's full
Just-
already.
It's 12 months of Jennifer reports. It's just been
4 hours for Jennifer. Next board meeting will be held on Friday, October 22nd at 1 p.m. We will have the Rails quarterly consortial reports, an update on EDI and training and engagement opportunities for Rails board members.
We are also coming at 10:30 too that day.
Oh, good point. Thank you,
That's
Becky.
right.
Thank you, Becky.
10:30. 10:30 for the
Strategic planning, yes.
Okay, again, thank you all for your attendance, and I hereby adjourn this meeting at 2:58.